Hello everyone, I am Bob and this is the Home Bitcoin Immersion Mining channel. In this build series episode, I'm going to show you 15 secrets you need to know to help you build the ultimate Home Bitcoin Immersion Mining setup. So with that, let's get started. Okay, so the first secret to Home Bitcoin Immersion Mining is to use a custom firmware that will optimize the heat output for home heating use. And this brings us to the sponsor of this episode, Brains, and their Brains OS Plus firmware. Now, I've talked about the Brains auto-tuning capability in previous episodes, but in addition to this feature, the Brains OS Plus firmware also has something called dynamic performance scaling. When using your miners for home heating, the heat demands from your house can vary quite a bit. When your forced air furnace or boiler system is running at full speed and you want to take a hot shower at the same time, your home will need as much heat as your mining system can produce. In contrast, in the middle of the afternoon on a summer day, your home doesn't need any heat, and your mining cooling system may struggle to keep your miners running. And so a way to vary mining power is needed, and the dynamic performance scaling capability of the Brains OS Plus firmware does exactly this. As the heat demands from your house increase and decrease throughout the day and throughout the year, the miner power levels will follow, and the miners will do this while staying within safe operational temperatures. This is a super simple way to ensure your mining setup is always operating at the right power level regardless of how much heat your home is using. And this is a huge benefit of running the Brains OS Plus firmware on your miners. Now, the second secret of Home Bitcoin Immersion Mining is knowing how to integrate your heat exchangers into your build. Heat exchangers are a critical part of any immersion mining system. There are brazed plate heat exchangers used in dual loop systems and in home heating setups. There are shell and tube heat exchangers used in pool heating. And by the way, if you want to learn more about pool heating, you can see the link above to that episode. And there are also liquid to air heat exchangers such as radiators and dry coolers that are used to cool the miners and for home heating uses. For any heat exchanger, there are two ways to flow fluid through the heat exchanger, and that is parallel flow or counterflow. In parallel flow, both the hot and cold fluid enter the same side of the heat exchanger and exit together on the other side, and this isn't a great way to integrate a heat exchanger. The hot and cold fluid can only be cooled and heated to some average temperature between the two, which can really limit the amount of heat transferred between the fluids. The alternative is what is called counterflow, where the hot and cold fluid enter from opposite sides. They cross by each other as they pass through the heat exchanger and then exit the opposite sides. This is a much better configuration since the hot and cold fluids can be cooled and heated well past the average temperature, and so this configuration allows for the maximum amount of heat transfer between the two fluids. So when setting up any heat exchanger, always use a counterflow design. And before I share the other secrets to Home Bitcoin Immersion Mining, I just want to remind you to hit that subscribe button below if you haven't already, and to hit that like button. Every interaction from viewers like you tells that YouTube algorithm this is good stuff and will help grow the channel. Now, the next secrets are a bunch of things that I've learned working around my mining system. And the first of these is tank positioning. Once you fill up your tank full of all the fluid and all the miners, it's really impossible to move it. It's just too heavy, so you need to get that right. And when you orient your tank, you're going to want to make sure your pump, your inlets, and outlets are all accessible. You want to make sure that you don't put them towards the back or out of the way where you really can't get to it. You might have to fix your pump, you might have to address a leak. You want to make sure that you can just get to these areas. Next up, after you get your tank in place, another really good thing to have nearby is a shelf. When I built this, I had 4-foot wide plywood, and so I just made this because it was easy, and I've used this more time than I can count. It is super useful to have some place nearby where you can set your miners, your tools, everything else you need ready to grab when you're working in and out of your tank. Now, after getting your tank in place, the next thing you need to do is fill your tank and fill other fluids in your system. And this is where a drill pump is something you really need to get. These are super cheap. I've used mine tons of times. I've actually burnt out one pump on my second pump because I use it so much. This is something it's really good to invest in when you start working with immersion systems. Now, the next secret has to do with cable management. Whenever you get your cables into the dielectric fluid, most often they are going to start to harden. Once they start to harden and stiffen up, it's going to be really hard to move them out of the way. So it's really important when you first lay your miners in to route your cables up and out of the way. And this is where the DCX BitPod tank makes this super easy. It has a bunch of metal loops around the edges that make it really easy to tie your cables up with zip ties so they stay out of the way, so after they harden, it makes it really easy if you have to remove your miners. Now, the next couple of tips deal with piping that dielectric fluid. As I brought up in previous episodes, it's super prone to leaks. And so when building your system, it really helps to use either a solvent welding or a compression fitting or something else that does not involve threaded fittings. Threaded fittings just really makes it hard to prevent leaks in your system. Now, completely avoiding threaded fittings is kind of hard, if not impossible, so you are going to have maybe one or two at the very least. When you do have a threaded fitting, it helps to use the right thread sealant. And the sealant I've really found useful is Loctite 554. I've used it on my system, and so far I've been running for many months at temperature and no leaks. Now, the next few tips deal with working with this dielectric fluid. This fluid isn't really dangerous, it's not going to make you sick, but it is an oil and it does get kind of messy. And the first tip here is to wear nitrile gloves. These are super cheap, you can buy them in a box, and pretty much any time I start working with my system, I put them on. Most of the time when you're working with your system, you're only going to be dipping your hands in the top 6 inches of your tank, and this is about all you need to protect your hands. Now, you really don't need them, but after you're working in your tank, you can just take your gloves off and your hands are clean. It just really helps manage that mess. Now, there are going to be a few times where you do have to reach all the way down into the bottom of your tank, and this is where full arm gloves are going to be really helpful. They're super cheap. You're generally only going to use them once or twice. The downside of these is that the arm parts of these gloves are really not made for this fluid, and after you use them a number of times, that part of the sleeve will start to become a little brittle and may leak. But really, I've only used them maybe once or twice. So just having these around for those 1 or 2 times where you really need them is really important, just because, again, it's going to help manage that mess. Now, the reason why I haven't had to use those arm gloves very often is this, and this is probably one of the most valuable tools you can have, and it's a magnet on a telescoping stick. I've dropped screws, small wrenches, other things in my tank, and with this, I can pull them out without getting myself messy. I've also had to move or remove my flow plate at the bottom of my tank, and again, I can do it with this magnet on a stick. So again, super cheap thing, really valuable to have around your tank when you're working on it. Now, when you are working in and out of your tank, be it with gloves, full arm gloves, or a magnet on a stick, pretty much any one of these things coming out of the tank is going to be coated in oil. And this is where having a box of disposable towels around is super handy. I use these all the time just to pick up the drippings off of whatever I'm pulling out of the tank. It really, again, manages that mess so I don't get oil all over my room. At some point in your mining, you are going to have to pull that miner out of the tank, and this is where you're going to need something to catch the oil as it drips off your miner. And what I found works best is simply a cover from a storage container I found at Home Depot. This is about the right size for a miner. It's super sturdy plastic. It collects the fluid, and I can just dump this back into the tank. Again, something super handy to have around when you're working with your immersion setup. And the final hardware secret is to have a good handle on your miners. If you don't have a handle on your miners, when you put your miner in and out of the tank, you're going to have to reach in with both arms. It's going to get really messy and kind of be a hassle. With the handle, you only have to reach into the tank the top 6 or so inches, again reducing the mess. Now, there are vendors out there that make professional looking handles. That's a really good option if you have the money. But honestly, for my setup, all I've been using is just a length of wire and some metal tubing. As you can see, I just wrapped this through the screw holes in the top of the miner, and it's worked really well. It's super cheap and allows me to move the miners around really easily. Now, the last secret to a successful home Bitcoin immersion mining setup is kind of cheesy, but it is essential, and that is you really need to be creative. Immersion mining is still a growing technology, and immersion mining on a home scale is still not very common yet. At every step of the way, you're going to have to figure things out and often use tools, hardware, or components in ways they may not have been designed for. It has really helped me in my build to keep on my toes and look at things from a different angle whenever I could. Okay, so that's all I've got for this episode. In the next episode, I'm going to give an update on Bitcoin miner efficiency. Like, subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes coming your way. And with that, bye.